Welcome everyone to this live webinar on Stop the Great Resignation, Strategies for Reducing Law Firm Turnover. You'll be provided with a recording of today's presentation. On your screen, on the right of the screen, you'll be seeing a section that says Ask a Question, and we encourage you to ask any questions at any time. We'll be handling those at the end. And before you leave, we would like you to fill out a feedback form, and we take those pretty seriously because then that helps plan for future presentations. So let's discuss today's speaker. We're honored today to have Inga Majol. She's the Chief Talent Officer of Dentons US. She's responsible for developing and implementing the firm's talent strategy and enhances the firm's ability to attract, develop, retain, and engage its lawyers, business professionals, and business services in the United States. She leads a team of professionals in the firm's legal recruitment, professional development, diversity and inclusion, and human resources department. She brings more than 2 decades of U.S. and international experience, and she develops and leads innovative people programs that support a strategic talent agenda. And this is a topic that's near and dear to her heart. We also have Nathan Hayes, and he is the IT director at Osborne Clarke, and that's one of Europe's most respected and dynamic law firms. He has over 20 years of experience in the delivery, sourcing, strategic development, and transformation of IT in the legal market, and he's worked at numerous law firms, including CMS, Cameron McKenna. His firm has an ambitious growth plan of expanding across Europe and Asia, so his challenge is developing and adhering to the firm's global IT strategy. One particular area of interest to him is how it relates to technology, or how technology relates to facilitate business transformation in the legal service delivery services. Now, my name is Colleen Shemeka. I will be host and co-presenter as well. I have 15 years plus experience in corporate law department consulting, leading transformation projects from working at the Big Four. Okay, enough of the introductions. So let's look at today's agenda. We're going to start with some stats on the Great Resignation and the impact on law firm profitability. Then we're going to explore why are employees leaving. Now, we also want to talk about tactics to retain lawyers, business professionals, IT professionals. We had a lot to choose from, and we've tried to pick some that are a little novel and some that are, time and true tested. And then at the end, we'll discuss the Q&A. So let's get started. All right, on your screen now, you see some of the reasons of what's going on right now in the legal landscape. And I'm going to ask Inga or Nate, discuss a little bit about how the pandemic, how it changed your firm.
Oh, thank you, Colleen, and hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, Inga Majol. So, pandemic has changed our firms tremendously, as we all have, the majority of us in the U.S. have departed our offices at the start of the pandemic. A lot of the firms have been able to return back to the offices. Some are still remote. So there's been a lot of shift in how we work, in where we work, and also how we approach work. The whole focus on work-life balance, living to work or working to live. Absolutely, Colleen. I think there's quite a lot of shifts that's happened.
And at the same time, we've got higher demand during this pandemic for legal services, especially with M&A activity. And then let's discuss a little bit about the lawyer shortage and business professional shortage, whether that's from people retiring early, the decreases of associates that firms didn't hire as many in 2019 or 2020 because they didn't know what to expect. Did you notice anything with that with your firms as far as the bandwidth or how many resources you had during the pandemic? Did that affect your firm at all as well?
I'll pick up on that. So absolutely, I think, in very simple terms, we have people leaving the workforce and we have people joining it. And with the pandemic, we saw an increase in speed of people departing for all sorts of different reasons that were all predicated on the experience they had as a result of the pandemic and what that meant their working life was about. and how they saw their futures differently. What that's done is that put obviously a massive squeeze on the remaining pool of talent, which hopefully will be a relatively short period of time as obviously the market shifts to adjust to servicing that pool. But in the meantime, we've got this period. How long it will last, we don't know, but it's certainly going to be a period that we have to attend to understand how do we address this problem, how do we overcome this significant increase in talent retention and attraction challenges.
Yeah, we're still in the period of uncertainty and change. Let's discuss the associate turnover stats. This is from Thomson Reuters. What do you think of this as far as like 23.2, almost a quarter of associates leaving firms compared to prior years? Is this shocking to you?
The number is indeed staggering, and I do think that is, even though the research shows it's around 23%, the actual impact is a lot higher, reported to 25, 26%. I think it's very hard to quantify the whole impact of the turnover it has on the firms as talent leaves the organizations. I think we are just beginning to start and quantify that.
True.
And Colleen, sorry, on the business services side, I think whilst they may not be quite as high as those numbers for the legal side of our business, we're certainly seeing an uptick in turnover amongst business services as well.
I know that especially IT resources are in high demand as more VC funding happens with legal products. Now, this was a survey that we did, and it was through November 2021, we being Thomson Reuters, and it was on a rolling 12-month basis, and it shows the associate compensation has increased by 11.3%. So some time has passed since November. Maybe one of you can discuss, what do you think of this percentage? Is it about the same? Is it higher now, or is it lower with the increase in associate compensation?
Yeah, like with the turnover statistic, Colleen, I think there's been a steady increase in associate compensation as we both go through it. We are emerging from the pandemic, but also we're seeing the rising demand on our associate compensation. There are more options, there are more opportunities for associates. So I think the associate compensation has certainly increased here in the U.S. Through a variety of times, and also it's been an increased demand on associates. So it's getting even more important for us to focus on retention and what we do to retain our talented people.
Sure. Yeah, that looks a little low. Discuss some of the ripple effects besides when you're increasing the compensation for new hires. Tell me, we asked some firms, and this is what we've heard from some firms, and I'm not sure if this is something that's you're seeing prevalent in the industry, in the firm sizes that you're in.
Definitely. I think firms are trying to get creative as to what we could do to not just adjust the salaries, but also focus on retention, right? So you mentioned here on the screen, stay bonuses, focusing on other retention factors such as different programs and flexibility to allow people to have more control of their work life. And I think I'm definitely seeing that in the US.
We're certainly seeing it in the UK as well. And I think there are costs associated with the activities that we're having to undertake to increase our retention and increase our attractiveness. Whilst that may not be in the usual form of salaries and so on, there are costs associated with the additional activities that we're undertaking to increase our attractiveness.
It makes you wonder if this is sustainable in the next few years, if the expectation are that the salaries are going to continue to go up this dramatically. So let's got a poll question. Okay, so this is where audience, we'd like you to answer this question. Since 2021, how has the Great Resignation impacted your firm or organization? Has it been an increase in resources? About the same? No difference in the past years? Where you, or has it been, you have no idea? Actually, I'm sorry. This third one should be decreased. I apologize. So increase about the same, and instead of gained, it should be decreased. And let's see. So the decrease is 22%. About the same is not much different. And then, of course, increase in lawyer and or IT, finance, or other business professionals. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so let's talk about the impact on profitability. Now, this is something we predicted. We saw that we did a survey in 2021, and we asked a lot of business leaders in law firms, what are your 3 highest risks? This, I think, was the form that we have that they come to, CFO form. And they said lawyer recruitment, poaching of staff by competitors, and increasing associate salaries. So let's look at this. This is a stat on how much it costs for involuntary termination. So when an employee leaves, to replace that employee. What do you guys think of this? 1.5 to 2 times the employee's total compensation.
Yeah, I think it is accurate. And again, also maybe on the lower side, because when we talk about replacement, these are not just financial costs. These are the costs that are the knowledge that leaves when an employee leaves the firm, the connections, the sort of social fabric changes when someone leaves the firm. So I think some of these are much harder to quantify. And absolutely, there's a cost of retraining, there's a cost of inducting, there's a cost of bringing people on that are in this range.
And I couldn't agree more. I think the issue that we've got is that direct costs are easily measurable, and it's actually the indirect costs which are much more significant than than I think that we actually warrant. So again, managing this retention is really critical to our businesses remaining and in fact improving profitability.
It's a lot easier to retain than to replace. When you're talking about the measurable costs, these are all measurable costs that are involved in replacing an employee. Some you may not even be thinking of. But the onboarding training costs when they get them, the recruiting costs, fees. And then this is one that is on the right, which is a bit harder to quantify, but it's the productivity loss, both of the person leaving, of course, the billable hours that will not be there, but also the colleagues getting up to speed on, the reassignment of work. They're not able to do all their work that they were supposed to be doing from before. And Inga, you mentioned the indirect impacts. Discuss a little bit more about that, maybe like how, whether it's morale or tacit knowledge, what have you noticed, like when an employee leaves and the group that's left behind that's taking up the work?
I think what it could affect is the engagement of the remaining employees. So it's very important that we focus on not just the employees who leave, but also employees who stay, who remain. I think a lot of employees leave and they may be looking for another opportunity or more flexibility or opportunity to do something different. And we've seen more departures like that during the pandemic. People are rethinking their life, they're rethinking what they want to do with their career and how much time they want to spend working versus doing other things. I think it's important to focus not just on that kind of the direct impact, but also indirect impact, spending time with the employees who remain, who stay, understand the implications and listening into their needs are equally important.
And sometimes it's almost like a domino effect when certain employees leave. It causes other employees to think, why am I here? Shouldn't I be looking too? What am I missing out on? And I kind of think that might be going on in the pandemic as well.
That's right. Relationships are very important. I mean, and having strong relationships in the firm is usually one thing that keeps employees connected to their organization, be that employers' relationship with their supervisor, their supervising partner, other colleagues, people in the firm, and who have this social ties that keep them in the organization.
Absolutely. So let's discuss a little bit why they leave. And Inga, you brought this to my attention, the survey, the Citibank private survey. And these were 3 of the reasons that they came up with. And if you care to comment on, or either of you, Nate, any one of these stand out to you? Or are they all pretty much similar, that when you're hearing employees that are leaving?
Yeah.
I think for me, sorry.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Okay, for me, flexibility. That's one of the key aspects. I think we as a business have a little bit of a challenge because we see culture as being critical to our business. And one of the best ways of evolving and sharing that culture is through having people physically in the same location as each other. So we're really trying to engage our people at getting back into the office to some degree, but trying to get that flexibility right, especially in relation to IT specialists, because they're used to the flexibility. The market is much more flexible than perhaps our business wishes to operate at in terms of that physical presence. So flexibility is certainly a problem area for us.
Sure, absolutely.
For me, I think, Colleen, it's better mentorship. I think in this sort of remote environment, the mentoring and connections that our senior leaders and partners have with associates and professionals are very, very important. Because I think and you see more and more firms, including our firm, investing into developing, more formalizing some of these relationships that we have done, for example, at Denton's executive mentoring program, which is our reverse or mentoring program where we pair our diverse associates and professionals with our board members. And they engage in a dual mentoring relationships where associates are providing feedback to the board members and board members are mentoring associates. And I think that's the key. The new mentoring is key to retention and making sure that employees are connected to the organizations at various levels.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially for when I think of the new employees that started their position in the pandemic, so they physically have never been in an office or been face to face with maybe their supervisor other than, Teams or Zoom calls. It's very wise to invest in mentorship programs. Now, this is something that we've been talking a lot about compensation, but in a survey we've done, and then there's other surveys that are out there, I don't know if this is surprising to you, that the major factor for leaving is not money. It's still important, but it's not money. Do you have any thoughts on that? In another survey, I can say that it was American Lawyers 2021 mid-level associate survey, where they said 60% would leave the firm for better work-life balance, where only 27% of the 3,700 associates they survey said it was compensation.
And I don't think that is surprising at all. There is a hygiene factor here in terms of getting salary and remuneration right. But it's not a replacement for other factors. And what we're certainly seeing is that people have a desire for a much more rounded employment arrangement, so that they have many facets of what they need as an individual being catered for by the business that they work for. And it's not just about salary and about benefits. It's also about the kind of work that they're doing, the opportunities that affords. It's about the very purpose of the organisation. What is it there for? And so it's very important for organisations to make sure that they're attending to all of those other aspects as well, so they are providing a fully rounded employment experience for their people.
Sure.
I absolutely agree. I think this is a time where the people skills, or excellent people skills, come to a fore. This is where good managers are very, very much in demand. The good managers, good leaders of people, because a lot of that is on them. I think that's absolutely agree with Nathan.
Let's move into getting to the real reason why people are leaving. And it's a topic called stay interviews. Everyone's familiar with exit interviews when someone leaves. Could one of you discuss a little bit about the concept of stay interviews?
Absolutely. Happy to discuss. I think in this remote work environment, it's important, absolutely important, to get a better sense of what excites employees, what keeps them in the organization, what motivates them, why are they interested. So my firm and the other firms I've heard of, where you're doing stay interviews, this is basically discussing with employees on a regular basis, like what do they like most about working here? Why? What keeps them there? What excites them most when they're getting ready to go to work or starting their Zoom in the morning? What long-term career prospects they have. And having these conversations before they come to you telling you that they would like to resign. I mean, making sure that we have these interviews, these frank discussions on a regular basis, so we can make their job better. We can improve their work-life balance or any other concerns that they express to us. I think this is what stay interviews are all about.
And this is different than the annual performance review where you're discussing the work. This is strictly their feelings about working at the firm.
Correct. I mean, they're more forward-facing and less about the performance reviews are generally looking backward, looking at the year that passed. We talk about goals, but this is forward-facing. This is talking about them and what keeps them engaged. What do they value most? What they like most about the culture? How can they stay more motivated in their roles? I think that's what the purpose of the stay interview is all about.
So we encourage you to do those. So let's look at some of the tactics that we chose to retain lawyers and business professionals. Again, before we get into it, this whole pandemic has made such a shift in the collective shift on the reflection mindset. Why am I here? These are some of the questions when we're talking about when people are thinking about, why do I work at this place? Is this what I intend to keep on doing? Should I be working in a different industry? Do I have balance in my life? Is this firm helping just clients or those less fortunate, where they're getting more into, more so now than ever? How is my firm's stance on certain social issues? Beyond the traditional diversity, and I don't mean to say that doesn't need to be expanded, it greatly does, but that has been there for a while. But I don't know, Inga and Nathan, tell me, have you ever had associates or business professionals asking questions beyond their job about what their firm thinks or what they're doing with social issues or?
Oh, absolutely, and it's increasing. Some would say that we, up until now, the ESG agenda has very much been driven by the exec within our business, and it's being driven by clients. But what we're seeing increasingly is that agenda is being driven by our people. They have an interest in terms of, we work in organizations which have, they're incredible tools. They're incredibly capable of making change. And people see that and they start asking, why can't we use these tools to deliver change to the communities, to the societies we operate in? And so we're seeing a lot more of that. We've set up within our organization a number of different communities that are very focused on all different aspects of the ESG agenda, to allow people to come together who have that interest and to use the capabilities within the organization to make changes in those areas. And so I think that's becoming, and again, I think it's really important around retention and attraction, is that so that people feel that is an aspect of the work that you will do when you join that organization. And that's just become increasingly important, certainly in comparison to the past.
Yeah, I think this whole, the work at home pandemic and all the, because you're around yourself more, it's given more heightened purpose to that, where you're on the internet more, you're in social media more. And I think, because I honestly, I think when I practiced law many, many years ago, the concern was, just the traditional clients. How am I doing my billable hours? Am I learning enough? But now it's so much broader. It's a little bit outside of yourself and a little bit about what you're demanding from your organization. because you're hearing about organizations that are doing a lot, and you want to make sure yours is.
Sorry, can I just pick up on that?
Please.
Because, and I think that obviously the situation in Ukraine has been a perfect example, where I believe that organizations of people working in organizations have demanded of those organizations to understand what their stance is on the situation in Ukraine. And those organizations that haven't responded to that in a way which has sort of met the expectations of their employees, I think have become a little bit unstuck, let alone the wider society.
I agree with you. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd say that just to say that this is so strong that a lot of the firms are creating a chief purpose officer, where that person is looking at all of the programs that you just mentioned, and seeing, where do we want to go? So it's going beyond like, this is what our organization values. They're actually putting more teeth in it and putting resources and funding towards it. So I thought that was exciting, seeing the chief purpose officer job descriptions being advertised. All right. We have got to discuss culture and how it is not only changed, but how it's changed permanently. So I don't know if any of you, in your firms, if you get together and partners or associates have talked about how the pandemic has changed the firm permanently, whether that be the hybrid work environment, whether that be the work-life balance, the extras that are going on while you're trying to manage your life at home and manage your work at home with the people that you live with. But what are your thoughts on culture right now?
Yeah, it's changed and it's changing. I think the process has started. I think the pandemic has started a big rethinking of how, what I mentioned in terms of what do people value about the organizations, and what firm culture, and how their personal values are aligned with the values of the organization. I think you mentioned purpose, and that's a very interesting topic as well. My firm is undertaking a big exercise right now to focus on our purpose and further define what is our purpose as an organization. And we have various sort of surveys and focus groups and 24-hour jams going on trying to talk about purpose and value. I think this is a good time for the organizations to focus on that. I think as we are emerging from the pandemic, there's never been a better opportunity to do that, because this is the time that things are changing.
Sure. And I want to point out that, in a survey we were working on right now, there's a section where we said, what would you like to tell leadership? There were a lot of associates that said, our leadership is saying, we're going to get back to normal. And they want to just say to their leadership that they're not getting back to normal. Everything has changed. So this is what we would encourage you to do in this tactic. Talk to each other. Have leadership talk to each other, talk to the associates. Figure out, how is the culture changed? Because there's a lot of good changes that have happened and that will continue to go. And to recognize it. Don't just say, okay, we're going to go back to normal, because everybody knows in their heart there is no normal anymore. It's going to be a constant evolution. And it's, you don't want to kick off your associates basically and think that they're looking at an old school firm.
Yeah. Okay.
So one thing we'd like to, we see coming in is with, how are you motivating your employees to want to return to the office? A lot of employees are saying, you know what, this has been the best test ever. We can do our job at home. We don't need to come to the office. Why are you forcing us to come to the office? I love working at home. I get more done. I don't have to do the transportation. I can really think. I could be in my space. So we put in here some perceived negatives, which I kind of just discussed, and then some positives. Tell me how are you guys motivating your employees to come to the office, whether that be business professionals or associates?
Well, for us, it's all about listening. It's really listening to employees, to their needs, to how their needs have changed over the pandemic. And we have learned a lot, a tremendous amount during the pandemic, not only about the technology. A lot of us had to be like overnight forced into using tools like Zoom, like On24 and so on, when we were not in particularly adept or skilled at using those tools, but and also personally, I think how we adapted our schedules, etc., and childcare arrangements, elder care arrangements, and so on. So I think it's listening and designing the workplace for tomorrow is what we need to do. There is no return to any kind of normal. We need to design a new workplace that is going to be the future workplace for us.
And I know, Nathan, it's got to be tremendously challenging with IT, because when I look at, positions open in IT, almost all of them are remote. And when you have...
It's perhaps a little more challenging. But I think, first of all, to the point where people say, well, we've had the most amazing test over the last 2 years and we've managed to work remotely. But I don't think people are necessarily totally honest when they come to talk about the costs of that. Because from my perspective, we've been burning both corporate knowledge and cultural capital over the last 2 years. Because up until that point, we had a lot of people that were working in close proximity to each other. We had evolved our culture, had a really deep understanding of the business. And over those 2 years, we've had change. People have moved on, new people have joined, and we've burnt through some of that capital. And that's not sustainable. So it's reminding people of that. Secondly, I think we have to point out, it's a plethora of different techniques that we have to use here. One of which is, we're moving into a new building. So we're providing people with a new environment. And we've said, we're designing this as a destination that people want to go to. So it has to be attractive. It's somewhere that people want to attend. But right at the other end of the spectrum, especially for more experienced people, within our organisation, we've reminded them of the benefit that they've had over the years from their own colleagues when they have been working, and that the reason why their careers have been so successful is they've benefited from being around others. And this is really important where we've got more senior people who tend to have much more access at home, have their own working environment, and so on, whereas with more junior people, they don't necessarily have that benefit, and therefore they're more likely to want to go into the office. Well, if we don't have senior colleagues around to share that knowledge and experience with them, then they're not gaining as much from being in the office themselves. So it's about really being very honest, and to his point about listening to what people are saying, understand, because there will be different requirements from different people. So it's going to be a whole suite of tools that we've got to use to address these issues.
Absolutely. And I think, there is so much benefit from being face-to-face with employees and the collaboration that's more difficult to do on Teams and Zoom. Some of the strategies, I think, also focus on the social aspect of getting together, of reconnecting with colleagues, try to do events that would encourage people to come into the office. But it's a hard time right now, when you're in this, and maybe some of it is not doing everything all at once, not going from, you're worked at home and now you must come to the office 5 days a week, or having more of a transition and letting employees discuss their feelings with you about what works, because it might not be one size fits all. You guys bring up great points on this, and I hope the firms really take heart to it. So some of the issues, if you're having a hybrid work environment where you have, people working both in the office and at home, which is challenging because you really have two offices and you're bringing work back and forth. Or you have people that are working slowly remotely or 100% office. There's going to be challenges in that whatever group you're in, you're going to think the other group has it better, more beneficial. So, those in the office are getting better assignments. Those in the office are getting, in-person training, where I have this, CLE training online. I don't have much partner presence. And then those in the office are thinking, God, it would be so great to be remote and be able to do all these home projects. You have all this free time when you're working at home. Craziness that people think that. And then there's also the geographic compensation policies that may be different for those that go work in the office versus are remote in certain areas. How would you give advice to leadership on how to handle this that we know is coming?
Yeah, I think it's like everything. We need to provide some training and tools and guidance to our managers and leaders on how to manage this hybrid workplace, workforce, because it's yet a new change, it's a new dynamic of how we are experiencing our work. And I think not everyone is prepared for it. So we are preparing a program. We've actually implemented it in several countries where we have re-entered back to the offices as to how to manage assignments, how to focus on making the anchor days, the presence days where teams are coming together, how to manage flexibility and how to be flexible when things do happen and, schools close or something else happens. But this is a new skill tool in our tool set that we need to learn as managers and leaders in this new world of work.
Oh, it's great that you're getting ahead of it. And a good segue into this, training your leaders on how to understand the hybrid teams. I love this quote of, what if we train employees and they leave? And then they said, what if we don't train them and they stay? This is an opportunity to rethink your training on what is it that makes a good leader. The leader could be at any level. Of course, everyone thinks of the managing partners or, the head of IT or something, but anyone that's working with people, anyone is, whether it's a summer associate that's working with a first-year attorney, that first-year attorney is a leader for that summer associate. So how do you get people to up their skills in this new environment that we're experiencing and will continue to experience? Now, tell me about this one. When we were asking basically people, everyone at law firms, all different kinds of levels and all different kinds of roles, what kind of training do you want? We were kind of gearing it towards tech training, frankly, and this is what they were coming back with. I want to learn how to better develop people skills for both clients and leadership, and teach me how the firm is making money. How can I contribute to that? How important is this during this environment that we have right now, would you say?
I think it's critically important. I think I think there has been a huge emphasis on learning and new ways of learning, right? Because we have to learn. We have to learn from other ways of our tools. I think looking at, like you said, business one-on-one, how law firm makes money, and that's very important. And I think a lot of firms are offering this program now much earlier in a lawyer careers. We used to offer this at our managing associate and senior managing associates. Now it's junior associates who are interested in finding out how law firm makes money. So I think we get a lot of requests now for learning earlier and at a different level, which I think is something that we'll have to adjust and adapt to.
That's wonderful. The earlier, the better, I think. All right, we have to talk about legal tech and its influence, but I did pull a slide that was not from Thomson Reuters, but from Bloomberg, because I wanted to show that this is pretty prevalent in the industry. 46% of legal employees said that legal tech has improved their well-being. So we're not just talking about, I can use it to do my job, but that with successful legal tech, collaborative technologies, it makes it more pleasant for them to do their job. Now, Nathan, I got to ask you, this is your area. What do you think about this?
I guess the question there is whether they say it's more pleasant or less frustrating. I think that's
True.
That would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's been fundamental, right? Right from the get-go of when the lockdown was introduced, tech was critical to us being able to continue to operate as businesses. But obviously, as we've gone through that, it's afforded all sorts of opportunities. And it's really important that we as organisations lock those benefits in, yes, we are going back to some traditional ways of working, and it's important that we don't lose those benefits that we've gained. Simple things such as the dramatic increase in the utilisation of e-signature tools. That's great. So that started that movement to a very different way of working. But there's incredible benefits that can come off the back of that. But as we've introduced people to the new way of working, there's all sorts of additional processes that they can adopt, which drive even greater benefits. So I think that in terms of just what legal tech has delivered for us, not only has it enabled us to operate in this much more flexible way, but it's delivered important benefits which has led to increases in profitability and so on. And it's really important that us as tech leaders really leverage that now.
Mm-hmm. And it's surprising, in certain exit interviews, when we've reviewed some of those, it's surprising to me that is one of the factors where they say, my firm is old school with tech and it makes it difficult for me to do my work. So that is something. And I do know that on a lot of interviews, the people are asking what type of legal technology will be available for me. Because they're getting more, especially in schools, they're getting more exposure to the state-of-the-art legal tech. Lots of vendors are going there and showing them the tools. So there may be a higher expectation on what they expect from their firm. Oh, go ahead.
I fully agree. Our younger generation of lawyers and professionals are looking at sort of the Uber-like experience when it comes to legal technology, and I think law firms need to keep up, right? Making it as easy to order like Amazon, etc. I think we've got to keep evolving and growing in this area. This is definitely an area of focus for most firms.
Now, here's the caveat. Associates want more legal tech because it will help lead to improvements in workflows and efficiencies, but they don't want more billable hours. They want more meaningful work. They want that time that's saved to do something more meaningful rather than do more of the same. That was from one of our surveys that came out strong and clear on that.
And I just wanted to pick up on that actually, because
Sure.
I think that the two absolutely, the first leads into the second, which is through introducing those efficiencies, it releases our lawyers up to actually engage with more meaningful work rather than undertaking the administration. So I think it's really important that we sell the benefits of these technology, these tools, so that our lawyers understand that it allows to give them time to engage with what they enjoy doing the most, which is the real core legal activity rather than the administration surrounding it.
And absolutely, I think whenever you're rolling out new technology tools, always think of it from the lawyer's point of view. Why will this make me feel better? Why will this improve my work? Not that, okay, this is a training you have to go to. We have implemented this technology, because you will get them trained, but you may not get them to adopt it and use it in their day-to-day. Totally agree with you on that. All right, now this is the fifth tactic, and this is on expanded benefits to increase retention. What have you noticed that firms have done during this time on benefits? What have they added? What have they increased? I don't know if they've taken any. I don't know if they've taken any away. But how has benefits changed for the average employee right now?
For us, I mean, all of that I think are very valid. I mean, there are, for us in particular, it was really focusing on robust wellness programs and making sure we make our benefits and our wellness benefits in particular more accessible to our employees. I think mental health and challenges with mental health are on the rise as a result of the pandemic. A lot of statistic on that. And I think making sure that we provide the tools and techniques from both our Headspace app, where employees can listen into different meditations and etc., to counseling. We now offer in some locations on-site or virtual counselors who our employees and lawyers can contact and have sessions that are completely paid by the firm, as well as some other activities, like we have seminars and webinars on nutrition and exercise and things like that. And a lot of these things are much more attended these days because people feel the need to learn more in that area. But I think focus on wellness and mental health in particular has been one of the areas that we have expanded in.
I think, like, for me, I know that with Thomson Reuters, the benefit that they added in this pandemic period that affected me the most was caretaker benefits. We get 2 weeks to use for anything for caretaker. And that, that could be for people that have small children. I use it for my elderly parents. That was so meaningful to me that happened. Now, granted, that's at an expense. And I know that, when I mentioned this to someone at a firm, they said, oh, that's going to be expensive, da, 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 da. And I said, well, what is the cost of retaining an employee? What is the difference? What is the cost? There's always going to be cost benefits on everything, but it is probably much cheaper to have a benefit like that and continue to retain your employees. And it shows that you really care. And then some of the programs that you mentioned, Inga, aren't a big cost, like nutrition. Everybody during this pandemic needs nutrition and more exercise wherever they can get it, because we're all on team calls and Zoom calls a lot of the day. So I would say think about that. And Nathan, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this as to benefits that you found for business professionals that are meaningful. Oh, go ahead, Inga.
No, I would also say stress management, burnout. These are some of the topics that were most requested on we do a number of polls, and we adapt our programming based on what we hear from our workforce. Sorry, Nathan.
No, not at all. So just to expand on that, I think I very much agree with what's been talked about in terms of adding new benefits, especially benefits which are very much targeted to some of the issues that our people are facing right now as a result of the new ways of working, and wellness is critical to that. But it's a shame that we're not doing this presentation in a few weeks' time. We're just going through a process of finalising our reward strategy, and as a result of that, we're making some very significant changes to our benefits, which is creating much more parity across the business. So some benefits that were only available to a small proportion of our business previously, the intention is to open right across the business. So it's a shame I can't talk about the details associated with that, but the critical bit here is to use benefits as a mechanism for retention, and really understand what value your people attribute to those specific benefits, and make sure that they can access them.
And I invite the audience, if in a couple weeks or 3 weeks, when that gets announced, email Nathan and he will tell you what those benefits are. You opened the door, but I understand why. All right, the second poll question. Which of these tactics has been the primary tactic your firm organization has used in response to the Great Resignation? So if you can choose one. That was the most important one in your mind that your firm has used. Give it a second. Any guesses, panelists, of what you think it's going to be?
Interesting.
All right, let's see the answers. Okay, I thought it was going to be, wow. That's pretty, I like that increased compensation. I knew increased compensation was going to be there, but I'm glad that change or improved culture, that we're taking the lessons that we're learning and improving the firm culture, which is very hard to do because a lot of the culture has been the same for decades and some firms 100 years. So this is a very pivotal time right now. All right, we're getting towards the end, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So here are some key takeaways that hopefully we provided some insight on during this presentation. Yes, the Great Resignation will increase costs and expenses for the firms. You're seeing that with the associate compensation, with expanding benefits, the increase in collaborative technologies that we have to have for this environment. And we're asking you to get ahead of the issue that may be arising at your firm with the hybrid working environment and having employees in the hybrid environment, fully remote or fully in the office. Another area we'd like you to focus on is does a successful transition look like? Always look to what is your end goal that you want it to be, and how do you go backwards and get to that goal? As Inga and Nathan mentioned, please look at supervising your lawyers and your business professionals on how to understand and work better with a hybrid team. And as Inga mentioned, the stay interviews are critical right now. Not focusing on, what the associate could do better in their job, or how to reach the never better, career, or same thing with tech or business professionals, what they can be doing differently. More on how do you feel right now about working here? What motivates you on your job? What demotivates you? What have you heard from other colleagues? What can we as a firm do to make this a more welcoming environment and giving you a better work-life balance? Inga and Nathan, do you have any other key takeaways that we might not have mentioned here that you'd like the audience to leave with?
Yeah, one thing from me is making sure that we keep an eye on our diversity and inclusion, making the place inclusive for all of our colleagues, and making sure that we take needs into consideration. I think it's very important that we don't forget that area as well. I would put it as a key takeaway as well.
The only one I would add is around just being flexible, because and being honest, because I don't think we have the answers to what the future working environment looks like and what our people will want, and therefore being honest with our people to say this is an evolving landscape, and we're trying to match the needs of our business, the needs of our clients, with the evolving needs of our people.
Absolutely. So add diversity to this, inclusion, don't forget about that, keep expanding, and flexibility, as it's a work in progress, figuring out what does that look like. All right, let's get to some of the questions and answers. We've got several here. Do we have any visibility on what lawyers mean when they say meaningful work? Inga, do you have any visibility on what they mean by when they say meaningful work? Or otherwise, I can answer it.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent question. I think it's hard to define meaning, because it's different for different individuals. But I think it's a good question to start a dialogue, a conversation. Ask that question back, what they feel is meaningful to them, and what would they like to focus on, because it's hard to make a sort of an assumption there. But I think something that contributes to the purpose, that aligns their values with the values of the organization, that allows us to contribute to the greater world and all of the other things in it. I think that what makes the work meaningful.
Yeah, and it could be, also think of it in terms of billable and non-billable. Do they like doing what they're doing because the one thing is, sometimes when you're an associate, you feel like you might be stuck in an area because that's what you've been doing for the last 3 years. What do they mean by growth? Is growth continuing to do that? Is it picking up different practice areas, different types of clients, different activities? And then I would also say, the non-billables. As an associate, you have a lot of non-billables, you're required to do, whether it's client entertainment, training of others. It could be going to certain conferences. What do they like to do? What do they think would make them, better rounded person, or better lawyer, better communicator? Start going into something like that, because it's more than just what they're doing day to day for the billable hours, but it's their whole kind of career, I would say. Here's another question. How do you identify which employees to conduct stay interviews with? And Nathan, I'm going to throw that one to you.
Well, I'd say identify your critical employees and start with them. I think and also to understand that there's different ways of doing stay interviews. So you can do heat map surveys, just very quick snapshot surveys to ask people for their views across your entire business. But in terms of, on the basis that you have a limited capacity to undertake in-person one-to-one stay interviews, then I'd be targeting your key individuals who are key to your particular team or department, whatever. But then also ensuring that you've got a good spread of the type of roles within your organisation. There's no point in just conducting stay interviews with your associates, for instance. They are a large proportion of your business, but they're still only a proportion. So you need to make sure you're getting representation from all areas of the business.
And I'm going to do one more question because I want to make sure everyone leaves early. And it is, should it be just the partners that conduct the stay interviews? What do you think on that?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think, in fact, earlier in the pandemic, we had a program where we actually asked everybody to reach out to everybody. So every manager had to call the people. So we had a very broad engagement at all levels of the organization. So I think stay interviews obviously important to do by partners and senior leaders, but also other in leadership and management positions. I think that there is always no substitute for a conversation, and having that personal one-on-one conversation, no matter when it occurs, is better than not having the conversation. I think that's what I think.
And I think that's a great way to end it. Have the conversations with your employees. So I want to thank everybody for attending this session, and especially to our presenters for your insights. And the conversation doesn't end here. They've encouraged you to contact them if you have any questions, any follow-up, any advice that you'd like to ask them about. And then soon a short survey will pop up on your screen. Please fill it out. It helps us design our next webinar. And I'd also like to thank the Thomson Reuters team, production team, for putting this webinar together. It's an effort. And most of all, thank you for your time and attention. Again, Inga and Nathan, we really value your opinion. I'm so glad that you were able to lead this.
Thank you, Colleen. I really appreciate being there.
Thank you.
And this ends our session. Have a great day.